Okay, so good afternoon, good people. Hello, hello, hello. I have been missing a little bit for some time. I think with the recess period and everything that's been going on, I just took a little bit of time out just to clear the head, refocus, recalibrate, and also work on content. As always, wanting to bring the best and share the best with you. I mentioned some time ago that I wanted to bring on some people onto the channel with whom I can share their experiences with you, their expertise with you. And so if there's any information that you can glean from that, then all the better. So with that said, I have my first guest. I am proud to say this is something that has been on the table for a long while, and I've been quite careful about, who I select to come on in terms of wanting to bring, best available content. And I met this young lady, Sanchia Alasia. I hope I've correctly pronounced your name. Recently, we were on a platform where I happened to mention, among other things, the fact that I used to suffer with endometriosis. And Sanchia thankfully reached out to me, and we started a conversation and decided that it would be perfect for us to, have some kind of dialogue and continue the conversation, if you like, on my channel. So I am thoroughly pleased that she accepted my invitation. So Sanchia, welcome.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for accepting the invitation and for giving up your time so generously. So Sanchia is a former mayor for the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham, an award-winning specialist in equality and diversity. Sorry, beg your pardon. She is also an award-winning specialist in equality, diversity, and human resources, and she currently works at Brunel University as the Equality and Diversity Manager. Sanchia holds a BSc degree in politics and sociology and an MSc in politics, policy, and government. She was first elected to the council in 2010 and was the first of 3 Black women to be elected there and the youngest woman on the council. Sanchia is very active on the political landscape. She was one of the Labour Party candidates for the European elections in 2014 in the London region. Following those elections, she was appointed by the then Prime Minister, David Cameron, to be a member of the European Union Committee of the Regions. Sanchia was also elected the deputy leader of the UK delegation in 2017 until 2019. This is a forum where she spoke up for local government in Europe. She's also held a number of other positions, including school governor, chair of the Health and Adult Services Scrutiny Committee, and also chair of the Planning Committee. Sanchia was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis in 2010 and has used her political position to raise awareness of the impact of the condition on her and the women who suffer from it. Sanchia, once again, welcome.
No, thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Well, I mean, especially with the last paragraph, after having heard the, rather impressive resume, I'm sure a lot of viewers will be wondering how on earth does she manage and marry all of those things and manage endometriosis?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, let's get to it. I mean, I just want to take you back to when you first started your periods and the onset of the symptoms of endometriosis. How was all that? How did that actually manifest?
I first started my periods when I was in secondary school, and I had the personal health and social education lessons about, what happens to a girl's body. And so I was expecting at any point in time that my periods would come. Actually, I used to check every now and again to see, because I thought it would probably be like a landmark moment or a milestone moment in my life, kind of moving through from childhood to maturity.
Yeah.
They started when I was at school. Actually, I did go to the toilets and see it was starting, and I was quite excited. I was about the age of 13 at the time. But unfortunately, from the very beginning, alongside the periods came a lot of pain, a lot of pelvic pain. In those days, it was a lot of pelvic pain and vomiting. And so every month on the first day of my period, I wasn't able to go to school. And I kind of noticed over time that it only seemed to be me in my class that, you know, when a period was happening, I was kind of, you know, pretty much sort of down and out for the day. And this wasn't really happening to anybody else in my class. So I started to notice that I was different, but I didn't really ask questions as to why or investigate really further. Eventually I went to the family doctor and she said that I was suffering from heavy periods, and she gave me various types of painkillers over the years, contraception, different type of contraception pill over the years, and that happened for many years. But yes, basically from the onset of my periods, the symptoms manifested of what I now know is endometriosis.
It's funny, I relate to a lot of that, especially that whole period leading up to when you start your periods. And I think I document that on my channel. I was so excited. It's the rite of passage, isn't it, for every young girl? Couldn't wait to have, you know, those adult conversations with my mom, with my other friends, and all of that. And I remember the slight anticlimax when I started, and then realizing that, hang on, this isn't quite what I was expecting. I thought it was just a routine that routine thing you go through every month. But the way it just made my life halt effectively when my period started. I used to remember watching adverts for sanitary towels, for instance, and their tagline was, you know, your life doesn't have to stop when your period starts. Well, actually, those of us who suffer with endometriosis feel very much like the opposite. Your
Absolutely.
Grinds to a halt, doesn't it? I mean, we'll talk about the diagnosis in a minute, but those years between realizing there was something drastically wrong, obviously doctors not quite understanding, fobbing you off, up to when you had that diagnosis, how did you manage that period in between?
I think I kind of just managed with various painkillers, contraceptive pills and hot water bottles, which I still use until this day. And just sort of back and forth to the doctors, but basically the awareness with doctors is now still low, but I think you know, it is sort of rising, which is encouraging. Probably back then, you're talking about in the 1990s, it was probably, you know, lower than what it is now. And so I just accepted the fact that each month, for at least the first day of my period, my life would be down and out, and that's and I just came to accept that was what was going to happen to me. Yeah, I just learned to live with it and just get on with the rest of my life in between the periods.
And it's funny how you just assume that, well, this must be normal, and you hope somehow. Obviously at school you're dealing with you know, the things that we deal with when we're that age, but it's anything but normal.
It's not, because a period, having a monthly period is not supposed to debilitate you, and it did. And on the odd occasion where it kind of started unexpectedly, I mean, in those days when I first started my period, I wasn't really tracking it. I do try and track it a bit more now, so I kind of maybe can sort of predict when it's coming, but I never used to track it in those days. I remember once we went to Manchester for a church convention, and I think on the second day it started, and I was just in absolute agony, sitting in a side room. It was just horrible, and that's how it was for me.
I hear you. So 2010 was a big year. It's funny, as I was just going through your profile last night, that's when it occurred to me. That was the year that you were officially diagnosed with endometriosis. And that was also the year that you were officially elected onto the council.
Absolutely. So it was a big year.
How did you do it?
It was a big year. I mean, the election came first. I was elected in May 2010 for Barking and Dagenham as a councillor. It was, you know, a tough election. We had a far-right party called the British National Party standing against us. So we worked quite hard to make sure that we could kind of you know, they had a foothold and we kind of managed to get them out. So that was really good. And then, yeah, sort of, I think sort of even during that time, I noticed that my symptoms were getting worse. So yes, they were bad all the way throughout those years, but I noticed that the length of days that I was in pain was increasing. So, you know, when I first started my periods, it was very much the first day. And after the first day, I could sort of go back to school and stuff. But I started noticing in 2010 that, you know, I was having 3, 4, 5 days of pain. And that's what led me to go to another doctor because I had moved. That's what led me to go to another doctor who was actually, I'm quite fortunate because I know a lot of endo sufferers don't have this, but when I went to her and explained my symptoms, she immediately referred me to a consultant, which I know is unusual because I know I've heard about the stories of women with endo who don't know they have it at the time, battle back and forth
So that was
with
the
their
first time
doctors,
you were
with
referred
their
to.
symptoms. So the first time I went to her and I said, I've always had painful periods, but the pain is more intense and lasting for much longer. She immediately referred me for suspicion of endo. So I'm very grateful to her for that swift referral because I know it's quite unusual.
And this was in 2010, you say?
This was in 2010. So I ended up at Newham General Hospital. I lived in Newham at the time, and they did a diagnostic laparoscopy. For those who don't know, it's sort of a day surgery procedure where they go through the belly button and look to diagnose endometriosis. Endometriosis has quite an invasive diagnostic procedure, even up until this day. So you actually have to have surgery. Really, the definitive diagnosis, they say, is through surgery. You can have it diagnosed through other ways, but definitively it is through a laparoscopy. And it was through that laparoscopy that they diagnosed me with stage 4 endo.
Right. How did that feel, that moment where you actually had a name?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about having operations is, you know, they sort of come up to you after the operation and explain things, and you're kind of in a daze. So, yeah, she explained it and she gave me a short information sheet and basically said, sort of go back to your doctor and ask for what should be done next. They said that they didn't have a consultant that was a specialist in endo, so they didn't feel that they could help me further. So I went back to my doctor and he referred me to UCLH, which is University College Hospitals in central London. And they had an endometriosis clinic there. And so that's where I ended up.
Right. So you were immediately referred to an endometriosis clinic?
I was, yeah.
2010. Okay, it was slightly different for me back then. So my knowledge about endometriosis clinics is quite sketchy. Can you just explain how, you know, the genesis and what they do and how they've helped?
Yeah, so over the years, I don't know who exactly has been encouraged this. I know it could be the British Society for Gynecologists. Hospitals have been encouraged to develop kind of centres for endometriosis over the years. And so back in 2010, the nearest centre to me was in Euston, despite living in East London. Now I have a centre about 15 minutes drive from me because one opened up near me maybe 3 years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago. Okay. So these centres have been developing, I think, as the awareness of the condition and how debilitating it can be for women, and that they need specialised care, because endometriosis is a disease that does need specialised care. It's not a general thing where you can sort of say, well, take this or do this or do that. It actually does need quite highly specialised knowledge and care. Absolutely. And so thankfully, these endometriosis centres have been developing across the country, where you will get typically an endometriosis specialist nurse, and you will get maybe 1 or 2 endometriosis consultants, and maybe 1 trainee consultant as well. Okay. And that's what I had at UCLH, and now I have at Queen's Hospital in Romford. And it's good because I think when you speak to them, I think you feel that you have confidence in what they're saying, because you know that they've studied endometriosis, and we know, as you well know, that endometriosis can be such a complex disease, not only to live with but to treat, because of the way in which it manifests itself. I think having that confidence that you're speaking to people that know and understand, you don't have to explain. You have to tell them what you're going through, but you don't need to explain how you feel or how it makes you feel, because they understand.
Exactly.
And that makes a big difference.
Sure does.
It really does.
Wow. So going forward, what was their initial advice? Did they give a prognosis?
Yeah, there was various different things that were offered to me, and I think it was a little bit overwhelming. I mean, I had various, internal scans and so on, and they offered me an operation, but quite a complex one. And I think a lot of women with endo would be able to resonate with this. And I just felt that I needed time to think about whether I wanted to undergo such an operation. When they tell you about all the risks, it kind of really put me off. And I didn't really go back and do it at that point. So I just said, well, let me just live with it and see how I get on. And that's what I did for many years. But then sort of 3 years ago, again, the symptoms started to get worse. And I did, thankfully, there was an endometriosis clinic closer to me, and I ended up having more tests and eventually having surgery this year to treat some of the endo.
Yeah, that was earlier this year, I think I remember.
Yeah, in February, yeah.
Okay. How did that, because I'm quite keen to understand how you've managed your busy, political life, personal life, with all of this going on in the background. Yes, it's great that they've been making strides with endometriosis clinics, but it's still quite an invasion. It's still quite an inconvenience when you're falling ill, you're having to go for appointments at the clinic, etc. How have you managed?
It is an inconvenience, and it's still an inconvenience to me today, but I think I've come up with ways to manage it. I mean, obviously, my employer is really supportive, which really helps. And again, I know that's a blessing, because I know, having spoken to other women with endo, they do have some employers that are not as supportive. So fortunately, I've got a supportive employer who allow me to work flexibly. So they believe in flexible working. And so I'm able, because obviously now the clinic is just a 15-minute drive, I'm able to accommodate those appointments within my working day quite easily. When I have my really bad days, because as you would know, with endometriosis, you might have some minor pain which you just kind of learn to live with, and then you might have quite major pain which stops you in your tracks, so to speak. So if I get the major pain which stops me in my tracks, in terms of I can't work on a designated day where I'm supposed to work, then I've spoken to my manager and my team about the fact that I suffer with it. So I'm very open that I have it. And that I might need some flexibility. So sometimes it depends on the severity of the pain. I can maybe do a half day. If it's really severe, I might not be able to do anything at all. And I might have to, reschedule meetings, or try and get someone to cover a meeting, or maybe the meeting's not covered at all. And that's the same with my political stuff. Everybody at Barking Dagenham Council is aware that I suffer with it. And I've sort of made them aware that I might need to cancel or change my meetings at short notice. And I have had to change meetings. I have had to pull out of things that I'm supposed to be speaking at. The last thing that I did, I was supposed to speak at an online event, and my period struck, and I had to email them. Luckily, they had a panel, so it wasn't just me, but I had to email them and say, I'm just not well enough to do it. And that happens. And that's part of living with endo. I remember booking a theatre trip to the open air theatre in Regent's Park. I paid quite a lot of money for the tickets, and my period came, wasn't able to go. So it does interrupt your life. And I guess, it's just something that I've learned to live with. But I try to reschedule as much as possible. It's not always possible, but where I can, I try to reschedule my appointments around it.
Yeah. How have you found the level of awareness when you have to speak with your political buddies, for instance, at work, or your employer, in terms of, how they receive you, and, levels of sympathy that they may show?
Yeah, both Barking Dagenham Council and Brunel University have been really supportive. It's kind of been down to me to raise the awareness, but I don't mind, because it should benefit me if they know about the disease and know how it affects me and the kind of flexibility and support I need. That's going to benefit me and other people, because sometimes as well, when you begin to raise awareness, what I found, both in the community, the local community, and that other people start to say, well, I suffer from endometriosis, or I suffer from something else that affects me. So that's really good. I think we should be able to speak out about the things that affect us. So I've taken it upon myself to raise awareness with the council, raise awareness with my employer, raise awareness on social media and so on about this and how it affects me, so people understand more. And I think over the years, it's like when you continually sort of pump something into people, it starts to resonate. And I think it is resonating with people. And now, when anything about endometriosis comes on the news or there's an article, people are now saying, have you seen this about endometriosis? I know you would want to read it. I know you would want to watch it. So I'm really pleased with the level of awareness. I think the level of awareness with wider society has increased. And I think that can only just sort of improve, really, as especially with the advent of social media, things like using Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. I think that's also helped to sort of, that those platforms have helped me, and I know others, to raise awareness of the condition as well.
Definitely. I mean, it's really good to let women out there know, especially just going back to what you were saying in terms of flexible working, for instance. Because I remember when I was, at the time I was working for local government, when, I was reaching my crisis point, if you like. And there were times when, yes, you'd feel slightly pressurized to not call in sick, when you'd have a perfectly legitimate reason to do so. But what I would do is I would call and let them know I'm not well, and basically say I can come in later on. So it was good that we had flexible working anyway with local authorities. You can, well, back then anyway, you could start at as early as 8, leave at 4, start at 10, leave slightly later. But I remember times when I'd have to go in, much later in the morning or even lunchtime, and I'd be prepared to work, and stay in the office later just to try and stay on track. But these are the things that you do when you just you're trying to cover all the angles.
Yeah.
I just used to feel acutely aware of my sickness record, not wanting it to escalate.
Absolutely.
But it's good that you make that point about making those people around you aware, because ultimately it will benefit you, it will benefit all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because that then creates an environment where it's not frowned upon when you say, I'm sorry, I can't make it, but what I can do is blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really important for women to know that they have those options available to them.
Absolutely. I mean, I work part-time at Brunel, but even if you work full-time, there's different kind of flexible working options where maybe you can do a compressed working week, for example. So a compressed working week would be you do a four longer days and have a day off, and that day off could give you that flexibility to manage the condition. I think, trying to have those conversations and make your manager aware is sort of the way to go as much as possible, and that's the approach that I've sort of taken.
Definitely, because I don't know about you, I mean, in addition to being under attack when you're ill and you're obviously in pain if you're incapacitated, what I also found was that when you do get over that, you get better, there's this extreme fatigue that can just come over you, where you find you need a good few days maybe to just come back to and start to feel normal again. So it's funny when you mentioned that compressed working week, that was something that I think I did that for a short period of time at work actually, and it helped somewhat just to give you breathing space.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally resonate, because particularly when you have your really severe days, you don't actually sleep properly because the pain continues through the night. Most of the time it starts at night for some odd reason. I kind of get these midnight, twinges, and so you don't actually get a proper night's sleep. And so that's where the fatigue then comes in, because you've not had your 7 or 8 hours rest, and that can be for 2, 3, 4 days if you're on your period, particularly, that you're not actually sleeping properly, as well as having the pain.
Absolutely, it's draining, and it's not even so much the sleep deprivation, which I don't cope very well with. It's just going through pain is an exhausting thing. To be throwing up is exhausting. So you're dealing with all of those different issues. That's why the symptoms of endometriosis are endless.
Absolutely.
That's just a few of them that we're touching on. So yeah, all the more reason why awareness is so important. And like you say, it's good that we're getting there slowly but surely, but there's still quite a lot of work to do. I wanted to just go back to the surgery that you mentioned that you had, and how successful or otherwise that was, and what sort of period did you need to convalesce, go back to work?
Yeah, so I had surgery in February. They removed some of the endo, but not all of it, because endometriosis can grow in quite some tricky places, and it's a delicate balance between trying to treat it and damaging sort of vital organs. So they removed some of it, not all of it, and also my bowel needed to be it was sort of in the wrong place, so they got a bowel surgeon to sort of look at that as well. A lot of women with endo have endo on their bowel, which is what I have. So you'll find a lot of the time with the endometriosis clinic, they're liaising with a bowel surgeon, which was what happened in my case. I was in hospital for just under a week. It wasn't that easy. I wasn't able to really eat because every time I ate, I threw up. So they, put me on a drip. So that wasn't fun. And then when I left the hospital to come home, not much energy at all. So it was really just very, very hard. But after about 2 weeks, I started to feel a little bit stronger. Now, the benefits of the operation for me are a bit ambivalent. 6 months on, I'm kind of still waiting. So I'm gonna be sort of going back to my endometriosis clinic for a follow-up. Obviously, I would have had a follow-up. A follow-up was actually scheduled for, I think it was April, but that was scheduled in February. And then obviously, COVID was sort of, it was there, but people in the lockdown hadn't taken place at that point. So obviously, once the lockdown happened, the clinic was suspended, and just like many other services, they were suspended. And so I haven't actually had that follow-up, which I know is not just for me, but for so many women. So I am going to try to get some sort of follow-up and aftercare, which is also really important, because you have the surgery, but then there's an aftercare program, and sometimes that's just as important as the surgery, really.
Absolutely.
But fortunately, COVID sort of derailed that a little bit.
Sure, I hear you. I mean, in terms of you having the surgery and going back to work, how long do you need to take off?
I took off 2 weeks from work.
Okay.
Was it about 2 or 3 weeks? I think it was. I think I took 2 weeks off as sick leave. And that does have to be sick leave. It can't be working from home or flexible working. You are 2 weeks after sort of a major endo operation to do any sort of work. So 2 weeks completely off. And then I think the 3rd week I did a little bit of work from home. And then I think by the 4th week I was able to work. But by the time it came into the 4th week, the lockdown had happened. So actually, the university mandated everybody to work from home. And so that obviously helped. Because sometimes if I need to take a break or I need to have a lie down, sometimes I just need to lie down for an hour. I can obviously do that whilst working from home. So yeah, that's been helpful.
And I mean, I know you're waiting for your first outpatient appointment. And in the meantime, you mentioned that some of the symptoms seem to either be coming back or getting worse. How are you managing in the meantime, apart from painkillers and trying to
Yeah, I mean, I have a variety of painkillers that I use depending on the severity. I've tried various natural remedies over the years, and I'm now trying sort of a flower-based remedy to see how that will go, sort of a bespoke one that was made up. Another thing that I'm thinking about is acupuncture.
Okay.
Because I've heard from other women that that has been helpful. So that's something that I might explore.
Okay.
So again, it's just kind of researching and just trying to manage things, especially because the endometriosis clinic is closed. So it is kind of self-care and self-management at the moment, and sort of talking to other women who suffer or who have suffered and asking for ideas of what they do to manage the condition. And I share what I've done as well.
Yeah. So you speak about other women. Where do you have any communities that you're part of, or groups that you're part of, where you can, bounce ideas of other fellow sufferers?
Yeah, so basically, obviously with online communities, they've kind of really grown over the last few years. So yeah, there's a number of Facebook groups around endometriosis. I mean, when I was first diagnosed 10 years ago, it was actually physical. You used to meet physically with people that lived in an area to you. But nowadays it's sort of, online meetings and sort of Facebook groups, and sort of people sort of pose questions and people help to answer. And that's kind of just women supporting women with the condition.
Yeah, which always helps, right?
Absolutely. It's good to know that you're not alone, and you can help someone with your experience, and somebody can help you with their experience, and that moral support is also very important as well.
For sure. Which leads us nicely on to Endometriosis UK, and you
Absolutely,
had strong involvements with them. How did that come about?
Oh gosh, well obviously I joined the charity. I didn't join it as a member as soon as I was diagnosed, but I can't remember exactly how long ago I did, but joined the charity. I went onto their website and they've got a number of resources, leaflets, helpful guides about how to track your periods, how to have conversation with your GP, how to, have a pain diary, just so much useful and helpful information. So I joined that, and obviously just sort of got their newsletters and sort of kept up to date that way. And then when I became the mayor of the London Borough of Barking Dagenham, traditionally a civic mayor chooses a charity or a number of charities to both fundraise for, which is obviously really important for a charity, but also to raise the profile of.
Yeah.
So I had 3 charities and I chose Endometriosis UK as one of them. And so during that year, I was really able to raise the profile of them as a charity, but also about the condition. So by the end of my mayoral year, a lot of people were talking about endo. They knew what endo was. They knew that, I suffered from it. They knew how it affected me.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really good. And then last year they put an advert out looking for trustees, and I thought, oh, that would be something that I would be really interested in doing. So I applied, and I had an interview, and yes, I was told I was successful. So I joined their board of trustees earlier on in this year. I think it was April or so. Joined the board of trustees. It was about June, I think it was. I joined the board of trustees, and I'll be working with the charity in sort of equality, diversity, and inclusion, which we know is a big subject over the last few months. So both on the volunteer side, so both with the volunteers and with the women that suffer from endo. So yeah, sort of really looking forward to the work that will take place, and making the charity sort of a better place, but also trying to make sure that the charity takes into account the different needs of different women.
Absolutely.
And, one of the things that, we're acutely aware of is that women from different cultural backgrounds face different challenges in terms of coping and living with endo. Yeah. And so we want to make sure as a charity that we take that into account in terms of how we develop our work.
Mm-hmm. I'm just really keen to just talk a little bit more about the moments when there you are, elected as a mayor, Barking and Dagenham, and you have this charity that's very close to your heart. I mean, I have causes and charities that I'm, very, very strongly involved with, but I don't have that blessing of being able to marry my, political affiliation or my professional skill set to be able to use that to propel those causes to a different level. How did that moment feel when you realized that you're in this powerful position, you have this platform that's not ordinarily available to other women, to be able to speak about matters that are close to your heart, that's affecting you so severely on a regular basis? That moment where you could see that you could really make a tangible difference, how was that for you?
No, I mean, it's a real privilege. I mean, I was a little bit nervous because, it was a charity that most people hadn't heard of. So, but I really wanted, I thought, I've got this opportunity, I've got this platform, and I wanted to use it wisely. And I'm really pleased that I did choose Endo UK as one of the charities, because I can say that at the end of the year, most people in the council and across even the borough are aware of this disease now. Some of them had never heard of it before. And just the fact that they're aware is enough for me, just to have that awareness of how it can affect my life and other women, and that there is a charity that is doing work around that. I think, I'm really pleased that I had the opportunity to do that.
Excellent. I have to say, well done. It's
thank you so much.
It's not easy trying to obviously marry, the competing priorities, but to be in that position, or to rather have the ability to say, well, how am I going to channel this for not just my good, but for the greater good? I think it's phenomenal. So that is remarkable. How was it with, in terms of your relationship with Endometriosis UK, and obviously the work that they could see that you were doing on their behalf?
No, we've got a good relationship, and sort of joining their board, I think that can only improve, and I think we'll be able to work together to reach out to more women from diverse backgrounds, and make sure that we are reaching out and understanding, any cultural issues that we need to understand, any diversity and inclusion issues about how endo affects them. So I know that the charity will be better for it, and they've been doing a lot of work, in terms of raising the awareness of endo in Parliament particularly, which is really good. There is an all-parliamentary party group, which is known as APPG on endometriosis, which was set up a couple of years ago, which is fantastic, because it now means that we have MPs in the House of Commons debating endometriosis. That is absolutely fantastic. And there are actually MPs that have it. And I think the MP that chairs the APPG actually has it. And that's fantastic. It's just to know that there's people in places of power that are willing to listen to what you're going through and have that debate in the corridors of power. It's really important that our voice is heard at all levels.
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid point that you make, the corridors of power. And when we mention those words, a lot of people often glaze over and don't appreciate or understand, if you like, what the mechanism might be. They don't feel perhaps that things are moving fast enough. I mean, with the benefit of your experience, are you able to share perhaps how things work behind the scenes? So yes, we have the APPG, we happen to have an MP who suffers of illness, and they debate it in Parliament. I mean, how often does that take place, and what leads up to that?
It would happen maybe quarterly or so, but one of the benefits of having it debated in Parliament is that obviously our democracy means that our MPs set laws and, have also, policy ideas and recommendations for employers or wider society. And so through having this APPG in Parliament, they have already been given recommendations to employers to, grant flexible working to women with endometriosis, and to be understanding, and to have, that being said in the Houses of Commons is really important, because people will sit up and listen. And so that's what we need. We need policy direction and support from the members of parliament, from the MPs, sort of saying, employers, you need to take this seriously, health profession, you need to take this seriously, research councils, you need to take this seriously, invest the money into researching this disease so we can learn more about it and actually try and find a cure one day. And, you know, less invasive methods of treating it, because treating endometriosis is like, you have to take such dramatic action. You have to have major operations or take quite strong painkillers, or kind of contraception that kind of ravages with your body. So, you know, invest in research into this disease. This is a disease that affects over 1 million women in the UK. It deserves that focus, it deserves that investment, it deserves that time and understanding.
It sure does. I mean, in terms of, I know one of the things that used to frustrate me, because I was part of the National Endometriosis Society back then, and, you know, did a little bit in terms of trying to lobby members of parliament, and even once had an audience with Diane Abbott. I remember at the time, one of my frustrations was, yes, you know, we're aware that they have finite resources and there are other things.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, the questions that were being asked at the time were, why can't some funds be set aside for medical research?
Absolutely.
You know, just like we're researching the causes of cancer, MS, you know, the list goes on. Why is endometriosis on that list?
It's not, I mean, endometriosis is not a terminal disease like cancer, but it is a very debilitating disease.
Indeed, and it has.
I mean, if I think of the working days that I've lost over the years, and that many other women have lost, and not just lost, but also the effect that has on your mental health and well-being, that investment will pay dividends. That investment will pay dividends. And so, yes, we need to keep pushing for more.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you're trusting now on the board, and again, well done. It's great that, you know, you're on the inside affecting change from within. This is what we need. I mean, as part of the bigger vision, what do you see with regards to, say, your remit with the board? How do you see that panning out? What sort of?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm new to the board, so you know, it's always good to have new blood every now and again, just in terms of governance. For any charity. So that's one aspect of it. I think the other major aspect, as I said, would be sort of developing work around equality, diversity and inclusion with the endo community, both in terms of those that volunteer their time and those that suffer. And then the other thing is obviously to keep raising that awareness, to keep working with the parliamentarians, to keep working with the media so that they keep doing the stories and the interviews around this, and just with our local community so that they're aware, and just for women who are suffering with this disease to know that the charity is there to help them. They have a lot of resources and information and fact sheets available on their website. They have a telephone helpline, which people can call, and so there is help out there. You don't have to suffer in silence. You don't have to suffer alone. There is actually a charity out there that can help guide you, and give you the information and resources that you need.
Absolutely. And I mean, in terms of women who might be wanting to get involved with endometriosis to make a difference, from your experience, you know, being part of Endo UK, are there avenues that, you know, women can consider consider where they can, you know, perhaps make a difference in terms of raising awareness, or, you know, what little bits can women be doing with Endo UK?
Absolutely. Well, there's a number of campaigns that the charity will run throughout the year, awareness raising campaigns, fundraising campaigns, which if you sign up to the endometriosis newsletter on their website, you'll get to hear. I'm going to be doing a Zoom, as everything is done by online these days, meeting with you know, women of colour that suffer from endo. We don't have a date from that, but we didn't want to do it in August, obviously, for summer holiday. And so, you know, I will be promoting that all over my social media, and we just want as many women as possible to come onto that. We have exciting projects that will be, and reports that we'll be launching throughout the rest of the year on both endometriosis, you know, general menstrual health and well-being, and actually working with the education sector in actually raising issues and teaching issues of menstrual health and well-being much earlier on in a child's life. And so, yes, there's lots of things to come. So if you sign up to the newsletter, and Endometriosis UK is on Facebook, it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram, you'll be able to keep up to date with our campaigns and certainly get involved. And we do have call outs for women that suffer from endo. We do have requests from the media for interviews, for magazines, for articles, and all sorts of things. So yes, there's opportunities to actually get involved.
There's plenty there. I'm really impressed by the forum you're setting up for women of colour suffering with illness, and I, for one, will be interested.
It's really important, because I think with women of colour, we have sometimes religious and cultural issues that affect us in particular ways that might not affect other women. And so I think debating those and discussing those and thinking about how we support each other and how the charity supports us is something that we want to develop further over the coming year.
Okay. Well, that's something I'll be looking out for.
Yes, well, obviously, we'll be bringing you into that meeting for sure.
Definitely, it would be a pleasure. Sanchia, I mean, unless there are any further closing comments, perhaps, that you'd like to add?
No, it's just, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to once again raise awareness of endometriosis. I think it's a really, you know, it's really important, you know, that I let people know that it's something that I suffer from, and that a lot of women suffer from. And we need that support, we need that understanding, and it starts with awareness, because if you don't know about it, then you don't know what you don't know. So having this platform with you to raise the awareness and the work that the charity is doing, and the work that goes on and how it affects me is really important. So I'm grateful for that opportunity, and I know, you know, there will be many other opportunities to sort of raise awareness as we go forth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's amazing. And as I say, the pleasure was mine. I'm grateful that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Time. And yeah, it just leaves me to say all the best in all your endeavors.
Thank you.
I have to say also that I have a lot of time and respect for you, in that, you know, you're able to rise above what's going on, and I understand what goes on when you're suffering with endometriosis.
Absolutely.
But to try to turn it around, you know, for the better. As I say, it's one thing going through the pain, but when you can take that pain, turn it into a passion, if you like.
Absolutely.
See the opportunity to, you know, turn it around. That's remarkable. So,
it is. It truly is.
Yeah, I mean that when I say that. Well done, and what you're doing. And
thank you so much.
We will be keeping in touch, no doubt.
Absolutely.
For sure. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Yeah, same here.
To just keep promoting and pushing the word out there, for sure.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Thank you once again for coming on my platform. I'm sure this has been a blessing to one, if not many, many women out there. Keep watching, keep subscribing, keep liking, and do share this video with other people that you feel might benefit. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay blessed, and I'll see you soon.